stop worrying about so many things and allow myself to be content at where God has me. And so it helped me. I hope it helped you. We're going to be kind of moving into hopefully what's another encouraging series, which is going to be called Life After Failure. So the idea is obviously we all know that we fail. We fall short. We may not like to talk about it. It may not be something we bring up all the time, but we fall short. We have flaws. We do things incorrectly. We make mistakes. It's just a part of our life on earth. It's how we are. The problem is sometimes how we view this failure, and that's kind of what I want to talk about today and what we're going to talk for the next 4 weeks. It's how we view this failure and what it kind of does to us mentally, but also spiritually when we mess up, when we have those things that we just don't reach the standard, okay? And so the first thing I want to mention today, about failure is just that we have kind of two different types of failure in our society, in our culture, just as human beings with one another. We have this acceptable type of failure. There are certain things you can fail at, and we're okay with it. We're like, yeah, duh. I mean, we're all not perfect. It's okay that you messed up on that. You know, for instance, things like, you missed an alarm, you were late to work, right? It happens every now and then, maybe like once every 6 months. It happens. You missed an alarm, you didn't wake up in time, you had an emergency in the morning, and you're late to work. That's an acceptable type of failure. It's like, well, it happens every now and then. We understand. Just don't let it happen all the time, right? Another acceptable type of failure maybe would be like promising to be somewhere. You're going to promise that you're going to be there or you're going to show up, and at the last minute you have to back out because either an emergency happened or you didn't realize that two things conflicted, and it doesn't feel good. Nobody enjoys it, but for the most part, it's like, hey, that happens every now and then. You can't control everything in life, and so backing out at the last moment, it's an acceptable type of failure. It's okay. We'll work it out later. Then we have these unacceptable types of failure, right, that we look at. And when we look at these unacceptable types of failure, that's when we kind of go, you did that. We can no longer be friends. We can't be in a relationship. I can't trust you. I don't want to rely on you. I don't want you to work for me anymore. Whatever it may be, now we've reached this unacceptable type of failure to where we can no longer be in relation. We can no longer coexist because of that type of failure. And some of these things may be like depending on what it is, it could be like breaking the law, like going to prison, like armed robbery, assault, right? Like, oh, I didn't know that about you. Now that I know that about you, it changes the way I see you. Unacceptable types of failure could be things as small as it's not really small, but instead of being late to work, you just don't show up to work at all for a few days, right? Like that's an unacceptable type of failure. You're probably going to lose your job. Like I'm just going to throw that out there, right? Unacceptable types of failure can be betraying somebody, lying, right? Lying about certain things about your life. These things we look at people and we go, those are the type of things that they mess up at, they make a mistake, and we look at them and go, well, I would never do that, right? And so that's an unacceptable type of failure. In fact, sometimes if you do an acceptable type of failure long enough, it becomes unacceptable, right? If you say that you're going to be somewhere and you back out at the last minute one time, not a big deal. You do it 10 times, it's kind of unacceptable now I feel like you're doing it to me on purpose, right? And so we have these kind of two gauges that we look at failure in our lives like that. And what we do is we apply it to people all the time. We say that this person has failed in one way. We can accept that. This person is unacceptable in the way that they failed, and that kind of bothers me, and I feel a certain way about it. The problem is that we take that idea, the way the world looks at it, the way we kind of have taught ourselves to look at it, we take that idea, and the problem is we apply it to God. And that's not spiritually, that's not biblically or scripturally correct in the way that God deals with our failure. When I think of this type of failure, I think of football, honestly. I think of it all the time as I watch the field goal kickers in football. That's what I think of. When I was in high school, I tried out to be a kicker. I made it, but then because of the stress, I couldn't sleep that night. I just never showed back up. So, but kickers live this life in which they have based their careers on such a razor's edge, right? They make 8 in a row, everybody's happy. You miss 2 in a row, the sky's falling. If you miss 1 out of every 15 field goals, it's not good enough, y'all. Like, right? We need more like 1 out of 25. Like, the standard for these kickers and their careers is such a fine standard, and if you miss or mess up long enough, they just get rid of you. They find somebody else. You could hit 3 game-winning field goals, but you miss 2 and lose 1, you're gone. We're getting somebody new. We're getting somebody else. And so they live on this razor's edge, and that's kind of how we function, especially now with like cancel culture, is you live on this razor edge. If you make too many mistakes, we're just going to find somebody else. We're going to replace you. But the reality is that is not how it works with God. And we have to keep that in mind. God does not God knows our failures. He knows we're flawed. He knows we're imperfect. But he does not necessarily cast us aside because of that failure. Instead, he still offers grace and restoration even through the things that we mess up on. And so the thing I want to talk about with life after failure is this idea that failure is not the end of our life. We don't fail and suddenly our relationship with God is over and we have nothing to live for anymore. We have life after. We can continue in this relationship with God even after messing up. And so what we're going to go over the next 4 weeks are people that we see in the Bible that do this exact thing. They mess up badly. You see them mess up badly. And yet, it's just proof that God is not done with doing work with them. That he still has purpose for them. He still has things for them to do. He still has work for them to do to bring him glory. And so that's what he does. And we also see that we don't remember those people for their failure. We remember them instead as great figures in the Bible that did amazing things with God. And so the first one I want to talk about this week, the first person we're going to speak of is Moses. If you want to turn to Exodus 2, you can. Exodus 2:11 is where we're going to be. I picked now Moses makes quite a few mistakes, I'm going to be honest. We see quite a few of the mistakes that Moses makes, which is okay. Again, we all make mistakes, but I picked one earlier, like a little bit early in Moses' life of, when the mistake happened. That way we could also see the product of all the things he did after that mistake. And so in Exodus 2, basically, if you remember, Moses was supposed to be killed when he was a baby. Pharaoh sent out an edict, basically saying that all the male Hebrews needed to be killed. Well, his mom didn't do that. She instead put him in a basket, stuck him on the Nile, and the daughter of Pharaoh finds Moses, and she decides to adopt him. And so basically where we pick up is Moses has learned that he is adopted. He's learned that he is a Hebrew, not an Egyptian. He's learned that he's not Pharaoh's son. And this is where we pick up. It says, Exodus 2:11 through 15, it says, years later, after Moses had grown up, he went out to his own people and he observed their forced labor. So he's going out to see his people. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his people. You'll notice throughout this how Moses consistently aligns with the Hebrews. This is important. If you ever read Exodus again, if you ever do a study on Moses, always make note, Moses is constantly going to align with the Hebrews, okay? You never really see him identify with the Egyptians. He could have said, I'm a prince of Egypt, I'm not one of those slaves, and he could have stayed an Egyptian. But for whatever reason, Moses consistently goes, that's my heritage, and he identifies with these people, which leads him to part of the issue that he experiences here, because I imagine he cares so much for them. It says he sees an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his people. Looking all around and seeing no one, he struck the Egyptian dead and hid him in the sand. The next day he went out and saw 2 Hebrews fighting. He asked the one in the wrong, so he goes up to the person that is incorrect. Why are you attacking your neighbor? The person responds, who made you a leader and judge over us? The man replied, are you planning to kill me as you killed the Egyptian? Then Moses became afraid and thought, what I did is certainly known. When Pharaoh heard about this, he tried to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in the land of Midian and sat down by a well. All right, so Moses basically here finds out he's Hebrew. He's not Egyptian. He identifies with these Hebrews, which is probably really, really difficult, right? Because he has basically been a prince of Egypt and had the Hebrews as slaves his whole life. Well, now he realizes those are my people. And basically he goes down to see his people, and he sees an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, which was probably in all, circumstances, probably pretty normal. But, the situation has changed for Moses. And so there's probably some anger. There's probably some frustration, some defensiveness going on. There's probably a lot of emotion going on there when he sees this happening. And I have no doubt that Moses had good intentions, right? I'm going to go protect somebody. I'm going to go save them. But honestly, isn't that how many of our mess-ups, our screw-ups happen, is we start out with good intentions, and things seem to go awry as we continue. Well, Moses goes, and he wants to defend this Hebrew, but ultimately, and I want to be clear about this, ultimately what Moses does is he murders somebody. That's what happens. He kills a man. All right, let me be clear. If I am in my neighborhood and I see two men down the street arguing and one starts punching the other, and in protection I run down there and push the man over and he hits his head on the concrete and dies, I'm going to jail. I've committed murder or manslaughter. Now, it wasn't premeditated, but that's how the law works. I killed somebody even though I should not have. And this is what happens with Moses, is that I touched the mic. I don't think he meant to do harm to this Egyptian necessarily, or he meant to murder in the first place, but that's what happens. And so now he's committed this sin, basically. He's messed up badly. The reason I also know that what he did was wrong are two things, and I want to share them with you. I know he did wrong because, number one, notice how it's phrased in the passage in verse 12, looking all around and seeing no one. Right? Before he goes and does what he does, he makes sure no one's watching. I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to take a chance here and say that if you're doing something, whatever it is, and you have to look around and make sure no one sees you, it's probably not a righteous thing. I'm just going to kind of throw that out there, okay? And then further down it says, he becomes afraid because what I did is certainly known. I'm going to go out on another limb and say that if you're doing something and you're afraid that other people might find out about it, probably not a righteous thing that you're doing, right? And so it just kind of points to this idea that Moses kind of knew or had this feeling that what he was about to do was either, now, maybe it was just that it was illegal. He knew that by attacking an Egyptian, he's going to get in trouble. Again, maybe he's not thinking, I'm going to kill this person. Maybe he's thinking, I'm going to, defy the Egyptians, which is not okay, which is why he's looking around for people. Maybe that's the case. But the reality is that in some form or fashion, he's breaking the law here. He's going against the law of the land. And it's for good intention, but that's what he's doing. And then the worst happens, which is instead of just protecting the person, he ends up killing the Egyptian. The second reason I know that what he did is wrong, okay, is that the Hebrew that he talks to doesn't respond to him with respect and gratefulness. Instead, these two guys are arguing. He goes up to them, and the guy doing the wrong thing, gets real defensive, right? And just like the rest of us do, Moses says, why are you acting this way? Why are you doing wrong? And this man responds with, well, didn't you do something wrong? Isn't that how we normally respond? When we're being told that we're in the wrong, we then try to find how other people were actually wrong. So that's what he does. He goes, why are you acting this way? Why are you acting this way towards your neighbor? And he basically, and the Hebrew responds and basically says, well, who are you to talk? What are you going to do? Kill me like you killed the Egyptian? Didn't you do something wrong the other day? And so I think both of these things point towards, I understand that Moses, when we look in a moral standpoint, is trying to do the right thing by his people. Absolutely. But the reality is that he killed or murdered somebody, whether intentionally or unintentionally. And this is wrong. This is not something we're supposed to do. When we see other people sin, it's not our job to then go and sin against that person. That's not how that functions. You can't control the evil other people do, but you can control the evil you do. And Moses makes a mistake here, and there's consequences to this mistake. Moses goes from being a prince of Egypt, probably living in luxury, to now he's no longer living in Egypt. The Pharaoh's trying to kill him, and he goes off to a place in Midian in which he meets a family. He marries someone. He becomes a shepherd, basically. So his life is kind of flipped upside down based on this one act. What we see and what I want to make sure we understand, though, is that God is not done using Moses. All right? Moses commits a lot of times in our society, what we would see now as a heinous act. Right? He kills a man, but God is not done with Moses. He still has work for him to do. And it's important that we notice that, because there are times in our lives where we think we've screwed up in a way in which is unacceptable or cannot be redeemed, and we convince ourselves we can't be used anymore. That's not how God responds to Moses. He still has things for him to do. And so I want to skip to Deuteronomy 34. That's where we're going to go. And I know it's a little weird, but we're skipping to the chapter where Moses dies, okay? Deuteronomy 34, I want you to hear just kind of what happens and what Scripture has to say about Moses when he dies. Verse 1, it just says, "Then Moses climbed Mount Nebo from the plains of Moab to the top of Pisgah, across from Jericho. There the Lord showed him the whole land from Gilead to Dan, all of Naphtali, the territory of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah as far as the Mediterranean Sea, the Negev and the whole region from the valley of Jericho, the city of palms, as far as Zoar. Then the Lord said to him, 'This is the land I promised an oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob when I said, I will give it to your descendants. I have let you see it with your eyes, but you will not cross over into it.'" Which, if you know, you know. But the reason Moses doesn't cross over is another mistake that he made. But it says, "And Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in Moab, as the Lord had said. He buried him in Moab, in the valley opposite Beth Peor, but to this day no one knows where his grave is. Moses was 120 years old when he died, yet his eyes were not weak, nor his strength gone." I want to point out that when he kills this Egyptian, he's probably somewhere around, and this is just me personally going at this, he's probably somewhere around 20 to 25, maybe 18 to 25, somewhere in there. He's a young man when this happens, okay? At least that's my guess. So just understand, even if he was older, maybe 30, 40, understand he still has 80 years at the least amount. He has 80 years of life left when he makes this mistake. And God uses all of those 80 years with him. Okay, like God is going to make use of that time. A lot of times we make mistakes and we think there's no coming back from it. There's a lot of life left after. And God knows how to use that time. So just understand, he's 120 years old when he dies, yet his eyes were not weak, nor his strength gone. The Israelites grieved for Moses in the plains of Moab 30 days until the time of weeping and mourning was over. Now Joshua, son of Nun, was filled with the spirit of wisdom because Moses had laid his hands on him. So the Israelites listened to him and did what the Lord had commanded Moses. And then verse 10 is almost like the start of a eulogy. It says, "Since then, no prophet has risen in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face, who did all those signs and wonders the Lord sent him to do in Egypt, to Pharaoh and to all his officials and to his whole land. For no one has ever shown the mighty power or performed the awesome deeds that Moses did in the sight of all Israel." That is a powerful passage in Scripture about a man who, when he was younger, before he even got away from Egypt, left Egypt because he killed a man when he was not supposed to. Like, as a young man, he makes a massive mistake that flips his life upside down. And then there's that powerful passage about how no one has done the signs and wonders for the Israelites the way Moses did. That is a glowing recommendation on a man. And if you notice, we don't remember Moses for killing someone a lot of times. We don't remember Moses for making a mistake with the rock during a miracle that God instructed him to do. We don't really remember Moses for his mistakes a lot of times. Instead, we remember that Moses was a man who spoke to a burning bush. He helped the Lord send plagues on Egypt, all 10 of them. He stretched his hand over the Red Sea as God parted it for the Israelites. He went up on Mount Sinai to receive the 10 Commandments. and most of the law. He led the Israelites as they built the tabernacle and the Ark of the Covenant. Not to mention he spent a lot of time in that tabernacle, and a lot of times he would come out glowing because of his conversations, his closeness with God. He tapped a rock and had water spring forth from it. Like Moses did incredible things. He saw incredible things happen. And these were all after a failure that he had in his life. I don't know if you do what I do. I'll explain what I do. All right. A lot of times I don't love criticism, but I have learned how to take it and use it as best I can. But a lot of times the reason I don't really love taking criticism is because I'm already a hard critic on myself. So then when you criticize me, it's like I've already criticized myself. So now you're like double criticizing me. That's how that works. And I've had to kind of teach myself that this is a trustworthy person in front of me. I respect them. So when they criticize me, it's for my good. It's out of love. And I've kind of had to remind myself of that. But naturally, I'm a hard critic on myself. Just how I am. And so when I have failure, when I mess up, and I don't mean like some small ones. I mean like, the big ones, the ones we make massive mistakes. When I mess up, what I do is I almost isolate, okay? And I spend a lot of time telling myself how I messed up, reminding myself how I messed up. And over time, it's almost kind of like I just beat myself down to a point in which I convince myself that I'll never be able to recover from this mistake. It's kind of unredeemable. No one will respect me anymore. No one's going to trust me anymore. And I kind of spiraled down into that space for a little while. And it takes days and days for me to realize that, there is still life to go on, and eventually I will recover from this, and God can still use me. But for a little while there, I'm almost like incapacitated, right? Because I isolate and I tell myself I'm not good enough. And so I don't know if you do that with your failure. I don't know if when you mess up badly, you kind of isolate and tell yourself you're not good enough, God can't use you, or you almost like push yourself down. But you have to realize, we have to recognize as Christians, we have to remind ourselves that failure happens. Sometimes it's big, sometimes it's small. Failure happens, but that does not change the way that God views us. As Christians, we have Jesus Christ who, with his blood, has covered us. And so when God looks at us, he doesn't see the bad things, he sees righteousness. He sees justification. And we have to recognize that because we don't want to hinder ourselves from continuing on ministry. Moses did something wrong, right? He had to flee from the place that he did it. But God was not done with him. He had plenty of things for him still to do. His life was not over. There were plenty of years in which God still had plans and purpose for Moses. And I know it's difficult when we make mistakes, when we have regrets. I know it's difficult, but we have to remind ourselves, we have to understand that our life is not done. God's not done with us. He knows that we're flawed. God knows we're imperfect. He knows that we're messed up. He knows we're going to make mistakes. Does that absolve us from our mistakes? No. We should still be accountable for the things that we do wrong. Absolutely. But we have to remember, we cannot let ourselves convince ourselves or Satan convince ourselves that somehow we've done something too wrong that God no longer wants us. That is just biblically and spiritually and scripturally incorrect. God knows our flaws and still wants to use us in spite of them. I had this friend, I was playing some games with some friends and I lost. Y'all know I hate losing. For a guy who hates losing, I seem to do it often. Trust me. But I hate losing. And in this situation, I had lost, and I had been on a losing streak. It wasn't just one. It was like, it was like the fourth time in a row I've lost, which not only do I not expect, but I'm not accustomed to. I usually at least get, one win every now and then. But I'd lost about 4 times, so I was kind of frustrated. And one of the people just told me something that was hard for me to hear then, but I understand where they're coming from, which is don't sit in your losses. That's what they told me. Don't sit in your losses. Don't just sit there and think about the losing. Focus on what you can that's positive and focus on the winning when it happens, right? And so, in a same kind of way, I understand that us as Christians, we're imperfect. We don't do things great all the time. But it's important as Christians that we don't sit in our failures. We don't live life in our failures. Because what happens a lot of times with people is they have this failure, you feel bad about it, but then you don't let it go. And everything you do after is like an avoidance or based on trying to avoid that failure again, right? And it affects your decisions, it affects how your relationships, where basically I don't want to be that person. And somehow that failure slowly is allowed to fester, and it's allowed to be tied to our identity, where I am this person and I have committed this failure, and there's no way for me to overcome that or get rid of the stain or the blemish that it's left. But we can't live in our failures. It doesn't even make sense. When I walk up to people and I say, hey, my name's Nathan, I don't walk up and say, hey, my name's Nathan. This one time I failed this class in high school. That's not part of my identity. It's not who I am as Nathan. When you meet me, I don't express all my failures to you, and those are what define me. Failures happen, but we can't live in them. We have to move on and continue to trust that God has more for us. We can't live in those failures and allow them to fester, because what that does is it starts to stagnate us and stop us from wanting to do anything else. We feel that because of that failure, we're messed up, we're scarred, we're broken, and we can't be used for any good anymore because of all the bad things that have happened. I told you God knows already that we're flawed. We don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about whether God knows that you're flawed. And for some people, this worries them, right? Because when I have a relationship with all of you in this room, y'all know me, I know y'all know one another. The reality is not any one of us in this room knows another person's all of their failures. We don't. We don't go around telling everybody, hey, today I did. That's not what we do. A lot of times, actually, sometimes, most of the time, our biggest regrets and our biggest failures, other people don't even know about them. They're not even aware of them. And so there's this feeling that, well, this person thinks that I'm a decent person or I'm a good person because they don't really know everything about me. They don't see all the times I fail on a personal basis. And so there's almost this fear that, but God knows everything. So he knows every time I fail. He knows all the things I've messed up on. And if these other people in my life knew everything God does, they would want no part of me. They would not trust me in the slightest. So why is it that God would want to use me in any way? But I have to encourage and reinforce that God does know all of the things you've done wrong. God does know your mistakes and your failures. And that's where the peace comes from, is that he still loves you and still wants you. There's this idea, if you're an unbeliever and you're listening, you're not, whether you're listening, you're here, whatever it is, there's this idea that, well, a lot of unbelievers think, well, I have to get right or I have to fix myself before I can go to God. And I'm telling you right now, that's just completely incorrect. Sometimes Christians even get that idea that I've kind of fallen off the wagon. I need to get better before I go back to church. And it's just not true. God wants you while you're broken and messed up. He wants you to come to him while you're scarred and wounded. Our God is a master of restoring and renewing, and he doesn't want you to try to fix yourself. He wants you to come to him so he can fix you, so he can bandage the wounds, so he can restore you in the way that you need to be restored. So don't wait to come talk to God until somehow you've decided that you fixed your own self. Come to God and allow him to do the fixing and the healing. That's what he wants from you. He doesn't want you to wait. And so this misconception that we have to somehow be good enough for God, again, it's incorrect. It's not scriptural. We are already insufficient. We know this. But it's because of believing and having faith in Jesus Christ and what he's done. It's by repenting of our sins that we receive grace, and we're covered with Jesus' righteousness, and that covers our insufficiency. That's how that's supposed to function. And so keeping that in mind, we are supposed to, even when we fail, even when we mess up, it's not our job to live in that failure. Don't get me wrong, hold ourselves accountable, repent, do things better, but don't live in the failure and allow that to define who you are and how your life goes. But learn to forgive yourself, and then more importantly, understand that God, through Jesus Christ, already forgives you. And move on. See how you can work for God. See what purpose, what plans he has for you, what things he still has for you to do so that you may bring him glory. There is a peace. I know we just got done talking about the contentment and peace, but there is a peace in knowing that me as Nathan, I don't have to be anything that I'm not. That I have a God who knows every flaw, every mess up, every shortcoming, every mistake I make, all the things that I'm not good at. He knows them, and yet he still wants me. There's no me pretending with him. I'm not like faking it, hoping I somehow slip into heaven. Right? He knows how messed up I am, and I don't want to say it's okay. He knows how messed up I am, and yet he still has grace and compassion on me regardless. There's a peace in knowing that. And so I'm about to finish. I'm about to pray, but before I pray, I want you to know, especially with talking about failures, we all have our own things that we deal with. And so today I'm just going to stay up here. And if you would like me to pray for you, if you'd like to talk about something you're dealing with, if anybody who doesn't necessarily believe yet but wants to come to know Christ because they don't want their failures to define them, I'll be up here and I'd love to talk with you, love to pray with you if that's what you need. We all have things we deal with. We have things that we have to get over. We learn a lot from failure. I don't know if you ever heard that before. You learn more from failure than from winning. I don't know if it's true. I feel like I learn and feel a lot better when I win. But there is learning and there is growing in failure. And so I would love to pray with you if that's what you need. Obviously, Charity would love that too. And then we also have the prayer cards and everything that we normally do. But I'm going to pray with us, and then if you need it, I'll be up here.